Hi, I'm Sarah Stockham, and I am so excited that you are here today just to be here for this conversation. But I also want to say thank you because we are entering our fourth season together. It has been an incredible experience for me. I have changed as a leader, as an entrepreneur, in how I think and how I process information, in part because of the dynamic conversations that we've had during this time together. I also want to share how deeply grateful I am to Field Trip in Newburgh, New York for their support, and also for Glass Arts Collective in outside of Los Angeles for their incredible support as well. And so as we get started today, whether you are here live or you are listening in a time that works best for you, we are so deeply grateful that you are here, that we're on this amazing journey together. And today we have someone who will be sharing, again, like we do every single time we're together, tips, tools, energetic ideas to help us move from places where we may feel like the energy isn't moving as well, that the flow may feel constricted, into places where abundance is happening. And so I'm so excited to bring Cori Freeman in for this conversation. Cori, we are delighted that you are here. Thank you for making time out of your incredibly busy schedule to be with us.
Oh, well, I'm glad we got this happening today. So I've been looking forward to this too. I've been just listening to some of the other episodes and there's just so much there and so much depth. And I'm sure there's so many people being blessed by this. So I'm excited to be here. Thank you.
Absolutely. You have a lot of things going on. You've been at the top of a company. You are a business coach. You are somebody who has your own podcast. And then you also have an accountability group. You are a brand new grandmother. How did you get to where you are today, friend? That's so much, Cori.
It's sort of funny because I was hearing that question posed to other people, and I'm like, wow, that's a lot right there. Because I'm 62, so there's a lot of years there, right? I feel like one pivotal moment in my life was unfortunately when my father passed away. I was 17, and I think from that moment on, I really had the awareness that life is short and that there is no room for just taking, just being flippant with your time or with your relationships. I just knew that that was just a really pivotal point in my life. First, I was in the restaurant industry for lots of years, like a lot of people are. And then I went into court reporting. So I was a court reporter and learned all kinds of, when you're a court reporter, you learn all kinds of different industries because you're learning all about lawsuits and slip and falls and medical and construction defect and all that. And then I fell into direct sales. So I was a direct sales leader for 20 years and I was tops in the company and trained the national trainers and was a national trainer. And I didn't see that one coming at all. So God definitely has a sense of humor.
Yes,
So,
definitely.
and then fell into the business coaching and I thought I had an idea of who my quote ideal client was, which was not the case. It completely did a 180 on that. And so I've been doing that since about 2016. Right after my mom passed away. And then the podcast was not my idea either. I'm doing that out of obedience. And I started that in 2021. So, and as far as how I had the grandchild, that was because I've been with my husband 43 years. We have 3 kids, and our daughter just had a child. He's going to be he's 4 months today, as of the 26th. So
That's
4
so
months today.
beautiful.
So
So beautiful.
really, it's a blessing.
As you talked about things just kind of falling into place, you weren't expected. Direct sales was kind of I think, I don't mean me putting words in your mouth, but a surprise, right? And then got
Definitely.
to a point that you were the, trainer of trainers and helping people really see the fullness of who they are. I really appreciate you sharing that, when your father passed away when you were 17, that really helped you solidify the fact that every day is precious and that if you have gifts and talents, and every single person does, right?
Mm-hmm.
To put those to use, to begin to find ways to be able to to use those. What was the most surprising part for you about that, about becoming a trainer of trainers?
Oh, that, what I think is interesting is every single step you go through in life, I think prepares you for the next step.
Hmm.
I wouldn't have been a compassionate to people that I was listening to them testify if I hadn't had the loss. Um,
Right.
but I knew a lot of court reporters who were very cynical.
Hmm.
It's
Sure.
easy to do. And same thing with direct sales. You're meeting a lot of people. So, like the restaurant industry helped prepare me to get where I was really easily talking to people. And then the business coaching, all these different industries that I'm helping, I had already heard and had a general knowledge of along the way. So I feel like every single step of the way has been preparing me for the next step, that foundational piece.
Hmm.
And I think the biggest thing as far as training people is caring deeply about the people you're training first of
Yes.
all, and
Yes.
seeing where they're from. Same thing with coaching, hearing their heart and hearing where they're coming from. I never coach anybody unless I can coach them personally and professionally. I made that a rule to myself,
Yes.
because if I have a CEO that's in front of me and they haven't had a date with their spouse in 6 months, that's going to be a homework item for them, for
Yes.
that week or two, because
Yes.
I want to build up. If your personal life is falling apart, your professional life is going to suffer, and vice versa. So
Yes.
I think just the self-awareness that everything is connected.
Yes.
I think that was a big thing as far as coaching, and also national training and training the trainers to go out to teach them not only how to teach, but
Yes.
how to communicate well, talk to people from a place of caring, to want them to be better in their
Yes.
training abilities because you're pouring into them.
When I was a mentor teacher, we had this very strong understanding that when somebody has taught something 5 different times, so that can be you teach it once a year, it's going to take 5 years, right? You teach it over 5 different times over 2 days, then you're going to get through the process a lot faster. But
Mm-hmm.
once you teach something 5 times, you have a much better understanding of the thing. And now you can begin to look at individual people and say, okay, I get the big picture of where we need to be, but how this individual person is going to get to that information or understand that this is the standard or get to this place of uh, taking this information and moving it forward and doing something
Mm-hmm.
with it becomes much more of that individual conversation. So I love that you talk about see people first,
Mm-hmm.
know your information so that you can see people first. And yes, you do need to get through it several different times, the information, so that you really own it. But I so deeply agree with what you were saying that when I stepped into this space of where I am now, there were definitely new skills I needed to learn, but it wasn't a whole room of new skills because I had
Right.
so many that I had brought with me from other things. I needed to tweak some things, but they were there.
Exactly. And I think, like the other day, I was training a group of realtors, and I was in front of them, and I'm, talking to them about not just their abilities, but also self care, and trying to help them as far as the stressors of being a real estate agent, which is, there's a lot.
Yes.
And as I was speaking, because I am used to seeing who I'm training, a couple of times I would say something and I was making eye contact with different people in the room,
Right.
and there was a couple in the room that were not okay. And I could see I was hitting just a very deep place in them, and one was just, she was looking at me, but she was so full of tears.
Yes.
And you just have to be aware of that. So after you finish speaking, you can go up to them and find out how they're doing. And it wasn't like I was hitting anybody between the eyes, but I was just talking about taking care of yourself, and when the stressors, just talking about the stressors of life was enough to trigger her.
Yeah.
And so I just checked in on her, but before I was able to check in on her, she approached me.
Ah,
So
love
afterwards,
that.
because she knew she was needing some more support. So
And I think that when people understand that you or whoever happens to be training or in the front of the room or having a cup of coffee and having conversation, right? When the other person truly is sharing circumstances and stressors, and the other person who's hearing it is saying, yes, that's me, that just that place of aha, that somebody
Mhm.
else in the world understands and sees that all of the pieces in my life are there, but they aren't necessarily flat. They're not
Mhm.
necessarily a glass lake, right? There's
Yes.
areas that there's turbulence and things going on. That ability to see somebody in that space is just uh, to be seen is so remarkable. It changes everything. It can change everything for somebody.
And I do agree so much that there's so many people, and I one of the things I was telling people, and a lot of my clients are men. I have never really figured it out, but it's pretty close to 50-50, I think, between men and women. However, I like to tell, especially women, that a lot of women, and I'm, arbitrarily what I see between the ages of like 35 and 60 especially. I I told him that day, it's like, even though I'm 62, I said, we're not okay. It's there's a lot of people out there struggling because they're trying to hold up, their job and their family and all the stuff that the world has to sort of, I don't want to say spit at us, but there's a lot coming at us at once. And there's a
Yes.
lot of people who are not being reminded to take the time, do the self care. And I'm not saying, you have to sit every single day and sing kumbaya to yourself, but I am saying that find the time to spend with family, find the time to
Yes.
have dates with your spouse,
Mhm.
or spend time with a friend that is where you pour into each other,
Yes.
and find time to sit still,
Mhm.
and to be peaceful. For the world is busy and the world is very loud, so just taking that time. And I'm singing to the choir all the time, because I
Yes.
always, or preaching to the choir, whatever the saying
Yes.
is,
Yeah.
because I have to find the time too.
Mhm.
It's not just where I'm being good about it too. I'm trying. That's how I know we're not okay sometimes, because
Right.
people talk to me and I'm like, yep, me too,
Yes.
same thing.
I always used to think that when I was no longer at a 9 to 5 job, that I would have these buckets of time, and it would just be so easy to be able to sit longer and meditate longer. And I will tell you that I haven't had a 9 to 5 job for less than a year, but we're getting pretty close to that year point. And I still haven't found my exact footing. I was more regular with my self care when I had the alarm, that time that I needed to be out the door, right? That alarm to get out the door.
Yeah.
And this space, it's not that it's not doable. Of course, it's doable. I have the skills, I know the things that work best for me. And having that quiet time in the morning has been since I was in high
Hmm.
school. That became a game changer for me in high school. Having that quiet time in the morning has always been something that's been so truly fulfilling and helps me set the tone for the day and helps me. And so when I get past that, when I don't do that, when I find myself busy with other things first, it does change the flavor of the day. And so I feel like I almost go into the space of um, if you're in a kitchen and you have a whole wall that has a whole bunch of different spices there, and somebody's coming over for dinner, and you're going to be making, tacos. Are they somebody who likes to have spicy ones, or somebody who is a gluten free or whatever? And so, picking out the pieces to have it go. The best tacos are the days that using this analogy are the days that I
Yeah.
choose that quiet space first,
Yeah.
and then come into a space of the rest of the day and what will happen and what does need to get done. How about
And
you?
well, same thing. I've been really good. I'm so proud of myself for the last, like, off and on, I'm a little
Yes.
roller coaster. Different times I've been good, at different at times not so good. But
Mhm.
I have been for the last probably about 18 months. I've been very good about my morning. I just have a ritual where I do my quiet time. I read my Bible. I then I go on my walk, and I've been walking quite a bit lately. And so that, just setting that. But
Yeah.
also, I really love Brendan Burchard's. He's a motivational, well, not really
Yes.
motivational speaker as much as business coach kind of person.
Mhm.
But one of the things he does is set intentions throughout the day. He has triggers along the day where before he goes into a doorway, he sets an intention of how he wants to show up in
Yes.
that meeting.
Yes.
And he plans out before his week. On Sunday night, he plans out the week. And I
Yes.
really like that.
Mhm.
And also, one thing that might help you too, one thing that I have found really extremely helpful, because I'm like you, I think that I make my own schedule. I
Yes.
have the podcast, which doesn't take too much time, a week. Business coaching, I schedule how I want.
Right.
Same thing with the accountability club. I schedule what
Yes.
I want. However, what I end up doing is, because there's a whole week there,
Mhm.
I get like, okay, I'll do this doctor's appointment and I'll do this podcast interview. And I find myself filling up the whole week, all 7 days or 6 days. And so what happens is, lately, I found it being more helpful for me to get that taking a breath if I look weeks in advance, every week or two in advance, and I block off a full day. And
Ooh, I like
even if it doesn't hold, at
Mhm.
least my intention is that it will
Yes.
be less on that day.
Yes.
And luckily, recently I had blocked a day, and I thought, okay, that's okay. I'm going to, not do any appointments or anything
Mhm.
like that on that day. And my daughter just happened to need me to watch the little guy on that day. So I ended
So
up
exciting.
like, okay, God kind of
Yes.
winked at me, and,
Yeah.
on that one. So I just feel like scheduling that full day, even if it doesn't hold all the way, at least it will be less crazy
Yes.
of a time
Yes.
if you purposely do not schedule it.
Oh, I love that. And with that, we're going to take a quick break. And as we are having this conversation, know that the things that we are sharing are things that you can be implementing in your life. I love the idea of doing a Sunday. Have sat down for years on a Sunday afternoon to write out what's going to happen during the week. Do I have it on my calendar in my phone? Yes, I do. But taking the time on Sunday helps me to look over the week and know energetically what it's going to feel like and start to have those ideas and concepts of how do I want to show up? How do I want it to feel? Hi, I'm Sarah Stockham. Recently, we were doing some renovation work, and as we were doing all of the decorating, the color blue, specifically cobalt, kept showing up for me in different areas in different ways. And I thought, what I really want is a signature piece that is in cobalt. So I went to Glass Arts Collective and found this amazing piece. I absolutely love it. In fact, when it arrived, my husband wanted it. It is so beautiful. It's nice and heavy. It was perfectly packaged. So when it came, there was no concern at all about if it was going to show up all right or not. I love that it's handmade. I love that it's unique. And I invite you to go to the glassartscollective.com and go shopping. Pick something up for yourself, pick up some gifts for others. I know that you will enjoy how beautiful the work is. Oh, it's so incredible to go shopping at places that you know that the owners are people who care about other people as well. So amazing. So, in this conversation that we're having with Cori Freeman, I love that she's giving us these tools, these ideas, these concepts of, yes, taking care of ourselves. Yes, allowing all that we've learned to be reworked in our life in a way for us to show up differently for other people when these new pieces come into our lives. And so, as you are working with people and sharing with them and coaching people, what are some of the ideas that are important for you? You started to talk a little bit earlier about personal and professional. What's the tug between the two of those, or the connection that you see between those?
Oh, it's like a spider web. They're so intertwined.
Are.
A lot of times when people are talking to me about different things that they need and they want out of life, uh, whether that's personal or professional, because they share both, a lot of times one is hindering the other or making the other one better. So, for instance, as maybe there's more of a tug to be more at home because their career's taking off and taking them more away from home.
Right.
And then some other times they're having that tug from home because they need the support because everything's falling apart at work.
Mhm.
And so it can be either way. But one of my favorite things to do with, not all the time, but if any of my clients are going to be listening to this, they know that it to be true. Probably about 50% of them out there, maybe 30%. I love it to have them go away somewhere peaceful and have no expectations of what's going to happen, but just go away for the day and, or if ideally the day, but usually with some of these people, they're so very busy. So an hour and a half where they go to a park or a lake or the beach, somewhere peaceful. And I always say, not your backyard, because you're going to be called into, oh, let me do something while, let me
Yes.
go throw lunch in there or whatever. So
Yes.
somewhere peaceful with just a notebook and a pen. And
Mhm.
I say this because I've done this a few times myself, and I'd like to give a shout out to Elizabeth Braswell, who's an amazing coach and also wonderful, just wonderful human being. And she was the first one that really challenged me to do this. And
Mhm.
now I have my clients do it. And just going away and being peaceful and sometimes being still and in peace and just quiet and letting the world calm down a little bit.
Mhm.
Sometimes people will come back and they will come back with one word, either about business or personal.
Yes.
They'll say, I just kept hearing the word relax, or peace, or maybe it's courage or whatever that word is. They'll come away with one word on that piece of
Mhm.
paper. Other people have no words. I had one CEO fall asleep, and he said, it's okay. Because at first I was like, oh, we'll have to redo it. And he said, oh, no, it was the best rest. My body needed it. And
Mhm.
I was like, okay. And then other people come back with a full business plan for a business they're thinking about doing, where they're writing and writing and writing and writing. And they just have the world sort of quieted so they can
Yes.
actually be more in tune with themselves, in tune with God, and just get these epiphanies. So I just love to do that exercise with people
Mhm.
because just what comes out of it is amazing.
Yes. Oh, that's so, so good. So I'm going to come off of the screen so it can just be you. I don't typically tell people this ahead of time, but I did this recently, and the guest said, "Where did you go?" So I just wanted
Oh,
to preface that. But I would love for you to share advice for somebody who is in that place where home life feels like
oh wow.
it really needs more attention, and work is really, the economy for some people is really taking off. And so the expectation for them to be there more, to do more. What advice would you give to that person?
Okay. Well, I'm glad you did warn me that I'd be on the screen by myself, because I would have said, where'd you go? um, if you're feeling like your home life is needing you, but you also feel like you need to make income and you're needing to do this, I would really encourage you to go to the people that are supportive in your life first and foremost. Um, Me personally, as a believer, I would be praying about it obviously first and trying to get wisdom there to try to find out where I'm supposed to spend my time. There are so many people out there that are feeling less than because they're in the workplace. And then there's people who feel less than because they're in home. So you have, me personally, I believe you have to find where you feel comfortable. Sort of, I'll give you an analogy. When I cut my hair short, all my friends with short hair say, your hair is so adorable. And people who have long hair, when I have my hair long, they'll say, your hair is so great. So you're always going to have the people that are having an opinion about what you're doing. So just as long as you feel good about what you're doing and your spouse or your family feels good about what you as a family have chosen to do, I think it's number one, the most important. I would say the home life, as far as what you're choosing to do with your time. If you feel overwhelmed, I will tell you a lot of times people, whether professional or personal, if they're feeling overwhelmed in today's society, a lot of times they're being distracted where they don't realize. And one of the biggest distractors is the cell phone, and not just tech, but especially the cell phone. And I fall victim to this too. It is where I have my emails. It is where I have my communication. I have my instant messenger. I have my businesses on it. I have a voluminous amount of emails that are coming in on all three accounts. And so it's very easy to pick it up and check it. Then I'm going to check the weather. Oh, I better check how to get there. And before you know it, you're on it in different ways and you're going down rabbit holes. So I would really encourage you to, and I can tell you really fast off the top of my head, if you're listening and you do feel like that's a challenge for you, to sort of be aware of it, is go into, if you have an iPhone, go into settings, go into battery, scroll down to last 10 days, and it'll show you a percentage of where you're spending your most time on your device, and it'll say 28%. And then you click on that, it'll tell you how many hours you just last spent in the last 10 days on that device. And I will tell you, I do a workshop called the Breakthrough Workshop. And when I do it, I always do this exercise. And I always have people that are blown away with how much time they're actually spending on their devices. So once they spend the time to look and see where they're spending their time, they can free up some more time. So that will free up more time at home and also at work. At home, I would also encourage you, dads and moms out there, spend the time with your kids when they're small. I had a lady that gave me great advice when my kids were small, and she held my hands. She says, the house can wait. The kids are only small once. Spend the time with them, get on the floor with them, play with them, have a good time with them. And so that was great advice. So I'll pass that on to you. Also, hang in there, moms and dads of teenagers. You'll miss those times, even though it's troublesome at times. And so hang in there on that. Those college age kids, hang in there with paying those college bills if you're in the thick of college. But every single step of the way, it all works out in the end. But be there, be present with your family, and don't put too much emphasis on the house itself. And then also, as far as working at the same time, finding that balance, in my humble opinion, there isn't really a thing as balance, because sometimes there's roller coasters. Once again, if you have a big project at work, it's going to be needing more time from you that might affect your home life. Then when things calm down at work, you might have more time at home that it won't affect it as much. So instead of looking at these balances and these checks and balances where it has to always be even, just know that there's ebbs and flows, and then just try to go with the flow and be aware. Once again, the self-awareness. I always talk about in the coaching, going from oblivious to self-aware to self-regulating to self-authoring. And what those are self, I'll give you an example. A kid who is just, maybe talking meanly to his friends, he's oblivious. And let's say he's a young kid. And then he goes into self-awareness, like, whoa, I notice that when I say this meanly to somebody, they pull back. They're not really wanting to be my friend as much. So that might be self-awareness. He starts to realize. Self-regulating is when he starts biting his tongue and stops saying something that he knows is going to affect his friendships. Then he doesn't even realize it, but he goes into self-authoring, and he starts to become the kind of friend that he wants to be to his friends, and he starts talking nicely to them. So, same thing with us with our home life and our work life,
Mhm.
just trying to go from oblivious to
Mhm.
self-awareness that it is going to be an ebb and flow. And I don't, I personally don't like the word balance, even though I know what people mean by it. But so many people are like, it's not even. I'm like, it's not
Yeah.
reasonable to me, you know?
Yes. You spoke about going into the phone. I had never heard that before, and what a powerful exercise to be able to go into an iPhone, look at the battery, and then go from there to see where you are spending the time and how. And I know that it's a tricky one, because we get texts from or information from people that we need to have on a consistent basis,
Mm,
right?
yep.
And yet there is other information that it's really okay if it sits there for 2 or 3 days or longer, right? It doesn't need to be immediately addressed. And so I love that you share that. I will be doing that exercise. Um, be-
I always have people in my workshops that all of a sudden will exclaim out like, oh, and I always say, do you want to share? And one person years ago said, it was a lady, and she was like, I play Candy Crush, and oh my gosh, I thought I was only spending, and she had spent hours a week on it and didn't know
wow.
it. So,
So I don't have any games on mine, but I remember um, when, let's say, about 20 ish years ago, when cell phones were no longer just something that you had if your company gave it to you, but you started having personal ones as well, right? And it was past the point of just having a personal one, but using it now for more pieces. And
mhm.
I remember going away on vacation and just amazed that, um, because Mike was working while we were on vacation for a certain number of days of that vacation, that he was on it so much. I remember my feelings of, hey, we're in this beautiful place. I know that you have to be. I'm the one now doing that. I am
Oh
so
no.
aware of that we just drove up to the mountains this last weekend. And on the way up, I was checking things. And on the way back, I was checking a few. And I thought, wait a minute, I just need to put the phone in the door and leave it.
It's
Whatever
so
is
hard.
going on is going to be fine. Everybody, mom's fine, daughter's fine, life is fine, right? And
Right.
just
And
enjoy it.
it's so hard too because sometimes if my husband's driving and we're going somewhere like an hour away, I
Right.
want to be fully present when I get there. So I'll
Yes.
say, do you mind if I kick out some emails on the
Mhm.
way so I can be fully present when I'm
Yes.
there? And 99% of the time, yeah, sure, and or we'll talk a little bit beforehand and I'll go in. But it is a challenge. And I will say, props to my all three of my kids are not on social media, and they're
Beautiful.
20, well, almost 28, and then 30 and 32.
Yes.
And they have jobs that they could be on it a lot, and they don't have any of it on there. And and another tip for anybody that
Yes.
is struggling with social media, even if it's for business, because okay, I'm the same way. I have it for my business too. However, I do go that down the rabbit hole.
Mhm.
And so what my friend did, she took it off of her. She took the social media platforms like Facebook, Instagram, and all that
Yes.
off of her phone. So
Yes.
now she has to go on her desktop to do it.
Yes.
So she's only when she's in the office, she does her work, she does her Facebook or whatever she wants to
Right.
do. But
Yes.
then as far as her phone, it's not giving her any notifications.
Yes.
So that helps too.
And turning notifications off, you have the power, all of us have the power to do that, right?
Hmm.
And I find that for myself, limiting the amount of time. So I am a headliner when it comes to reading the news. I don't want to know the minutia. Doesn't mean that I
I
shouldn't know
don't
the
think any of
minutia,
us do.
but I do want to know when big things are happening around the world.
Mhm.
And so I know that I'm looking at headlines, right? I'm just doing a quick, and that's been a personal decision. There was a time that I was not reading headlines at all. And there came some big events that happened that I knew nothing about. And that's
Mm.
when I realized, it might be wise just to have at least a little bit of knowledge. I will still walk into situations and not know things. And no longer embarrassed by that. It's just, I haven't gotten that far down or whatever in terms of what's going on. But having the power to be able to decide how we want to invest our time. All of us have the same amount of time. It's one of the things that's equal across the board for us, right? But how we choose to use that time is absolutely individualized. And some of it is impacted by the stages of life that we're in. And
Mhm.
to recognize that it is, like you were talking about, the elementary and the middle school, the teenage kids and the kids in college, all of those spaces are transitory. None of them, there isn't a child alive that was 10 years old 10 years ago and still 10 years old today, right? All of it is changing all the time. And I think that that space of coming in and recognizing that everything is changing all the time, even though we so long for some changes, um, there are things that are changing every single day.
Very true. I always tell people that are in the diaper changing stage, it's like right when you feel like you can't change another diaper is when they get potty trained. And right when they think, right when you feel like you're ready to like, oh gosh, I can't handle whatever's going on, and then, like the, fourth grade where they're making the I'm not creative. So the year where they had to make the California mission, they had to make a
Missions.
mission and it's like,
Yes.
it's like I can't handle another project, or sports where you're driving to like running events at 5 in the morning into another city, or all those soccer parents out there, they're trying to, or even VBS, when the kids are
Yes.
small and it's a lot of different things. So
Mhm.
right when you think you can't handle it, things transition to
They
something
do.
else,
They do. Yes.
yeah,
So true.
yeah.
In the space of what you do, you have chosen to very specifically work one on one, work in person, work distance, work in groups. How did you come to these decisions as a business owner that this was how you wanted to do do your business?
Well, I've always loved people. I just love
Mhm.
people. I'm one of, people always are, oh, I hate people. And I'm like, I can't even relate. I just love
Yeah.
people. And I love working with them. I love training. So I love big groups because of the direct sales. The biggest group I've ever trained is 4,000.
Wow.
And so I had 4,000 people that I was training. And so that's the biggest group I've ever had. And then I love working one on one, helping people start their business and get their logo or their name or their packaging of the material, things like that. I
Yes.
also love leadership. And so I love working with supervisors and managers and owners and founders and CEOs. I love that too. I love the whole like to be part of all of it. That's always fun too. So
Yes.
when I first became a business coach, when I was, I'd already had a lot of experience for 20 years doing coaching, but I went and got, trained and certified and advanced training, and then got more from the World Business and Executive Coach Summit,
Yes.
lots of training, and still do, and don't ever stop learning because I'm an addicted learner too. But they would always say, pick your niche, pick your niche. And I, get really dialed in. Like I help women who are starting businesses that are between the ages of 40 and 60, or
Yes. Yes.
retirees that are, and I'm just like, okay, I just am happily nicheless. And
Mhm.
I just look at it like God's going to bring me the people I'm supposed to work with. And I had a complete thought process of who I thought was going to be my clientele, and it ends up being completely different.
Mhm.
And it's so interesting to me how that happened. But it's just like the title of my podcast is called "Don't Ignore the Nudge,"
Yes.
and I interview people about their nudges from God, and some of them are seriously unbelievable. I mean, unbelievable, including the one that made me do the podcast for myself, my story. But one of the things I try not to do is I try not to ignore that. So I really didn't feel led to pick a group to work with.
Mhm.
And I do have people that refer me, and then this person refers me to somebody in San Antonio, and then somebody refers me to somebody in Canada, and then this
Mhm.
one refers me to somebody in another country. And so I just sort of go back to the flow, right? Going with the flow
Yes.
and just
Yes.
wherever I'm feeling led to work with people. And I do refer people out if I feel like it's more of a therapeutic thing that they need a therapist. I do
Right.
refer out all the
Yes.
time. I
Yes.
also refer, I had somebody come to me and they really needed some help with something that after hearing what they needed, I knew of a woman that I felt like was just ideal.
Mm.
And so she's actually one of the coaches that work for me. And so I referred her to her because I felt like
Yes.
she would get more support through
Yes.
her.
Yes.
So yeah, but I
Yes.
just go where it wasn't really it was more of in the beginning just knowing that it didn't feel comfortable to
Mm.
have one way of doing things. And I think people like, Steve Jobs and Apple and people like that have
Mhm.
been out of the box thinkers,
Yes.
so it just works that way for some people, I think, to just think differently, I guess.
Hmm. And I love that space of you listening to the nudge and responding to it. I think that that's one of the things that's overlooked. It's a hard thing to teach somebody, that there are nudges out there, because I think for my belief is that for each person, those nudges come differently,
Oh, definitely.
and how we feel them. And then because it's a nudge, it's not a billboard that everybody else sees. It becomes a very personal space of decision making. Do I choose to follow the nudge? Do I choose to lean into this, believing that in my entire life I've always been cared for? Therefore, I can choose to lean into this, knowing that I will still be cared for, right? And
Yeah.
so, having that space, I think courage is the word, to be able to lean into that and to press into it. I think those are really critical concepts and ideas, and again, difficult to teach because they exist, but how they show up for each person is
Yeah.
a different way.
Exactly. I'm 180 episodes in. Was not my idea to do this. Oh, thank you. um, but I will say the main reason I did this was because about 16 years ago, I think it was 16 years ago now. My daughter's way better than me about figuring out dates and when things happen. But I think it was about 16 years ago at 11 o'clock at night, I felt this overwhelming urge to call my mom. It was like I might have well heard it on a billboard and seen it. It was like,
Yes.
call your mom.
Yeah.
And I was like, what? Why? And I wasn't sure why.
Mm.
And then I was really analyzing it because my mom didn't like to be called after 8. And
Right.
I was like, oh, that's not good. And so my husband said, well, if you feel like you're being led, if you feel like God's leading you to call your mom, you better call your mom.
Yeah.
I called her and she had been this is Monday night at 11 o'clock at night. She had been on the floor since Sunday morning, we think. So 36
Mm.
hours, no water, no medication, no
Right.
food, no
Right.
facilities. It
Yes.
was, it was
Yeah.
terrible. And
Yes.
the ambulance drivers told me that if I hadn't come, she most likely would have passed away.
Yeah.
And so that is what the whole impetus of the
Mm.
podcast was. It didn't make sense why I needed to call my mom, but
Right.
I'm so thankful I didn't
Yes.
ignore the nudge
Yes.
to call my mom. But I
Yes.
have ignored the nudge sometimes of different
Yes.
things. So yeah.
And I think when the question why comes up, we are so, I know that I'm so inquisitive, why should I be doing this? If we can move in our own personal conversations, our internal conversations, from the why to how can I?
Mhm.
How can I honor this nudge? How can I best, knowing what I know, how can I best move forward with this? That begins, and then not to trying to not answer it, not to have, because our brain is always looking for the question or the hypothesis that we put out. The brain is always looking for ways to be able to say, yep, you're right, you've got this one, right? And so when we start to ask these questions of how can I, or how can we, and then not answer it, it allows, I think, a different level of freedom, a different level of question, and answering that comes back, and a different way of being able to filter through the answers that come back as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree. And like you said, it doesn't make sense sometimes. And
Mm-mm.
so many of the people I interview, it just doesn't make any sense. No sense at
Right.
all.
Yeah.
Led to go to a pier, and then when they get there, somebody's trying to commit suicide and they save
Right.
him.
Yes.
And just random things, feeling like they were supposed to keep taking their daughter to the doctor. And everybody was like, she's fine, she's fine. And she just kept being bugged to check her
Mhm.
daughter and check your daughter, check your daughter. And
Yes.
she kept on and kept on. And they were really kind of getting irritated at her.
Mm.
And it ended up, when they finally figured it out, somebody did some tests, and she was a type 1 diabetic who had not been diagnosed. And they put her in the hospital for a few weeks because they said
Yes.
she was going into a diabetic coma.
Yes.
So, I mean, if she hadn't done that, her daughter
Right.
would not be here, most
Yes.
likely. So, just the
Yes.
weird, I just love I always say if it's weird, it's God. If it doesn't make any sense at all.
Right. Yes. I
So,
will be holding on to that. If it's
yeah.
weird, it's God.
Another one of my things I like to say back to the coaching is growth is in the gray, because it's never the black or the white. It's always when you're right there where, do I take the
That's
job? Do I not take the job?
good.
Do I marry this person? Do I not marry this person? Do I go to this college or do I not go to this college? That gray is just where all
Yes.
the growth is.
Yes. And for me, I was super impatient as a child. I'm somebody who likes to have, after lunch, the silverware is washed and it's put back in the drawer. It's just an easy thing, right? It's going to get there at some point, probably. And so I'm somebody who often likes to have that feeling of, um, for the Myers Briggs, it's a J, right? That
Oh
judgment,
yeah.
not that I'm sitting in judgment of other people. I just
No,
like
no,
to
no.
have finality on things. And, lists work really well for me. Crossing things off just, woo, makes my day. And in that space of gray is that space of learning to sit and not have an answer.
Oh, it's so
And
hard. My friend and my daughter, our daughter, discuss my Myers Briggs because I think the J is what they disagree on. So my friend's
yes,
like, but she's spontaneous, and my daughter's like, nah, well, because of this. And I just
right.
sit back and watch them discuss me.
Yes. But you're able to be spontaneous because you have all these other pieces in place. And so that you know that you can rest and relax and, do the fun, easy things
Yeah.
because of all these things over here are taken care of. Yes.
Yeah, so
Wow.
true. I love like the disc profile, and I love the and the love languages and all these different
Yes.
ways, and the colors that some of them are the
Yes.
blue and the red and all that. And I remember
Yes.
years ago, what was her name? There was a lady that had all this sanguine and
Mhm.
I've all those, and there's all these labels, but there's so many nuances that it's very
Yes.
hard. I hold labels very loosely. So
Mhm.
when somebody comes in and says I'm an,
Right.
E whatever J,
Yes.
or if they're I'm a D on the, I can't do this because I'm a red, you know, I just, okay, we're going to let go of those labels and
Yes.
try to
Yes.
get beyond those.
Yes.
Yeah.
And for me, the first person who explained, and this would have been decades ago, about Myers Briggs, she says, Sarah, you're right handed. It means that you prefer and you're more adept at using your right hand, but you can still use your left hand. You can eat
Correct.
with your left hand, right? So it's not that you can't, it's just that
Good.
your first pressure in, your immediate response is going to potentially be one way rather than another.
It's a
And
great way to look at it.
learning, yeah. My sister is a double board certified physician and she does incredible surgeries. And I began watching her eat with her left hand. And finally I said, why are you, you're right-handed? And she says, I'm working on my dexterity so that when I'm doing surgeries that I have more dexterity with my left hand.
Yeah.
Wow, that's a skill. You know,
And let her know that studies, because I'm such a medical geek.
I'll
The
tell her.
studies Those studies on neuroplasticity right now are showing that if you do things with your non-dominant hand, it actually helps build the neurons in your brain.
So
So
much.
as far as making it,
Yes.
the neuroplasticity, it's better to not have the neurodegeneration, because if
Right.
you brush your teeth with your left, and
Mhm.
anything pouring a drink,
Yes.
writing, anything with the left, it actually helps that. So
That's such
anyway,
a
sorry to go there. I just I
no,
just
that's
I
so,
just heard
so
about that.
good.
So
Yes. I am loving this conversation with you, Cori. As we're starting to wrap it up, are there things that you want to reiterate? We've covered so much.
I just would really encourage everybody to get support wherever they can. If it's somebody that, if you want to start a business, get support from somebody who's been there, done that. If
Yes.
you're wanting to um, talk to somebody, like even if you're in a community group of some kind where you can pour into each other. But so many people have really shut themselves down out of either fear or non-trust,
Yeah.
or they build these walls and they don't want to share and they don't feel safe. I
Yes.
would really encourage them to try to find ways to, even if they can take off a block or two of the wall, and try to let someone in closer to them and start trusting at least maybe one person out there. And for those who, have those walls down, reach out to people who can be of support and
Mm.
try to go there and get the help that they need, whether that be professional,
Mm.
therapy, or whether that's learning a new skill,
Right.
or, whatever it is, just try to get support in the areas you need to grow in.
So I'm taking a course right now with Jasmine Starr, and I've taken courses with her before, and it's live. It's fabulous. And she really encourages, she's the social curator, and she really encouraged all of us to get into accountability groups. And so I, very sheepishly went into the community and put my name in there, and nothing happened. And I kept checking back to see. And then there were these two other people who had taken a class together about 5 or 6 years ago and happened to find each other in this particular class and said, "Hey, we're starting a group." And so I said, I haven't found other people yet to be in a group. I'd love to come join your group. So a few months ago, I will finish the story in a second, but we, a year ago, moved out of our house. I finished up the year teaching. There were things that we were finishing up doing. It was a lot of unknown, a lot
Mm.
of unknown. Moved across the country for lots of really, really good reasons. Um, and when we got here on the homestead, there was so much more work than what we thought there was going to be. And we've been coming here for decades, right?
Oh, wow.
And so, but coming here and purchasing the property and realizing how much more work that we needed to do, fine. But with that, along with the 3 hour time difference, I just really struggled with feeling connected in the groups that I had been with and so deeply involved with for years, right?
Mm.
And knew that this was a new season, knew that this was a time for me to be using all the tools that I had. I've moved around the world. This is not my first move, probably isn't my last either. But to come to this with really an open heart, in a place of saying, what is it that I can learn in this space? Coming back to taking the class, this course with Jasmine Starve, social curator, we began to work together in this group. I'm in East Tennessee right now. One person's in North Denver, another person's in Scottsdale, Arizona. And the three of us have been, and now there's a fourth person who's come in also. Our ability to speak clearly to each other on the projects that we are working on has been such a piece of community that is so incredibly helpful. And so, again, if you haven't found your community, you haven't found your place, I just encourage you to not give up in that process. Exactly what
Mhm.
you were saying, Cori. Find the people who can support you. And they may be strangers who live in a different state that you were working on a project with, but that's okay.
Mhm.
I always, for me, it was always the people in my village who lived, when we were in Africa, who lived right there, literally in the village. And when I've moved in other places, were people that I was, in choir with, or I was in the band with, or, those were my communities, my spaces. And so, with the freedom of technology to be able to come into this space and say, I'm going to learn something different, but I'm also going to challenge and be challenged to a point that encourages me, the best
Mhm.
version of me, to show up. And
Right.
that has been really powerful. So I really appreciate you bringing that up.
Oh yeah, accountability and a group that you can be close to and
Mhm.
have accountability is it's everything. I believe in it so much. I felt like I needed it recently, so I actually hired one of my own coaches, the accountability partner.
Beautiful.
I actually hired one of my own accountability partners to be my accountability partner.
Excellent.
So
Yeah.
I don't hold her account. She's doing that service. I'm paying her, but
Yes.
you know,
Yes.
because I needed that. I saw that, so there's a structure, there's a process, and so
Yes.
it's great. It just helps a lot.
It does. Thank you so much again for taking time and being with us today, Cori. You have shared such empowering tools with us. Thank you.
Oh, I'm so happy to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. And to our audience, thank you so much for staying to the end. I had a conversation recently with the network president, and she was saying, as soon as you turn off the recording part is when the really good information begins. I'm here to tell you that you stayed to the end and you got the really good information. Have an incredible week. We will be back together next time. And know that when we are, that somebody else will be sharing powerful information to help you live a more empowered life.